Thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Graham, your host. This is My Business, Your World. Today, our guest is Mr. John Ahel, who is founder and president and CEO of J.A. & Associates. He's also a business consultant, trainer, speaker, marketing and sales specialist, and also a trade show coach. John has over 30-plus year experience developing and managing businesses. His roles include National Sales Manager, VP of Sales, Director of Marketing, GM, and EVP and COO. He was also elected and has been and served as president and CEO of 3 public companies and successfully raised $7.5 million on Wall Street. John also served as director in internship for the program at Farmingdale University, New York. He's a distinguished veteran of the U.S. Navy. John founded the LIASB back in 2009. He has also lectured at colleges and professional associations throughout the U.S. and has been an adjunct professor for MBA programs at local university. He currently is a guest lecturer at Stony Brook University in their bioscience doctorate program. John, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, really quickly, I didn't touch on it, but tell me a little bit about this initiative, biometric system that prevention of welfare fraud for over $1 million, I think, the tri-state area that you were instrumental in.
Yeah, I brought, at the time they were doing biometrics as finger imaging, and it was used for the prevention of welfare fraud. It had been started out in California, and the finger imaging was a major part of their program out there. Then it was brought here to the Long Island, and I thought there was something worthwhile that we needed. There was a lot of talk about, the politicians were always talking about welfare fraud and how much it's costing the counties and the states. Excuse me. And I went to a number of different legislators. I told them what I had, what the product that I had, and it's history from there. I first sold it to Suffolk County, and as soon as they got it, then Nassau County got it. And we were the only 2 counties that were exchanging data on a continual basis. And then finally went into Connecticut, and then into New Jersey, and then New York State picked up on it, and then the rest is history. Now it's used throughout the state.
Wow. What made you even come up with that?
Well, I was working at that time. I was a consultant with a company that was involved with biometrics, and I just felt that it was something worthwhile that we could use. And with a little creativity on my part, so to speak, I brought it to a number of different people and said, "This is what we have to offer. I think it could be used in this particular area," and it proved to be worthwhile.
You seem to have a passion for being very creative and for instigating, for the want of a better word, new initiatives or things that are for the betterment or empowerment of either groups or individuals. Let's talk a little bit about the LIASB for now. Tell me a little bit about it.
In 2008, when things were getting very tough for everybody on Long Island, I was very active in a number of different organizations on Long Island, and I went in this one particular organization I was a member to. They decided to raise the dues $50, and I went and talked to the president. I said, things are tough. They can't afford it. And she said, no, they can't afford it. And as soon as she said that, I was out of there. I didn't think that was the right way to talk about people in general, and especially small business. I did a lot of research. I found out there was a number of different companies. Right now, at the present time, there are 158,000 companies, less than 49 employees on Long Island. At the time when I started looking into this, there was 122,244 companies, less than 49 employees. And I said, nobody's paying attention to them. All these other companies talk about it, but they don't do much for them. So I put a business plan together. I gave it to a couple of people to look at. I met with them out at a diner, and they grilled me for about an hour. And finally, one of the gentlemen said, I think you have something worthwhile here. I was very fortunate, but I knew a lot of people, and especially I was involved with a couple of different networking groups, and I picked out the people I thought were worthwhile that could start this with me. And I had a wonderful board of directors. We made some major impacts. The first meeting we had, at the time, we had Supervisor Levy was our guest speaker. We had over 630 people there, and especially all these other groups coming, wanted to find out just exactly what we were doing. Since 2009, when the organization got involved, we involved with the organization, we have grown considerably. We don't have thousands of employees, but we have a lot of people that are involved with us, and we have close to 100 employees at the present time, and it's growing every month.
Now, you mentioned something in terms of the cost, and that small businesses are not atypically able to afford an increase. And I want to argue, I mean, you can argue to or against this point, because there are certain nuances in who are we to dictate or decide what those funds should be used towards. What are some of the challenges you find that small businesses are coming up against?
Well, we're fighting on a problem right now. We feel that the healthcare is discriminatory against small business. If you're a large business, you take advantage of the discounts, but if you're a small business, if you're less than 49 employees, you can't take advantage of that capability. We're pushing bills through, hopefully through legislature, where a small company can, or an organization like the LISB, which is a not-for-profit organization, can offer to its members health care at a decreased cost, 20 to 35%. One of the biggest problems you have after salaries is health care right now, and it's not going down, it's going up. We talk about a 5.1 or a 5.7 unemployment on Long Island. There's people have stopped looking for a job. It's so frustrating out here. It is to get a job. If you're over 45, nobody wants to talk to you, and it's sad. So a lot of people become consultants. They talk about 158,000 companies, small companies, but they doesn't even take into consideration those organizations or those people that are sole proprietors. And we have a lot of those people out here just went into business. They were engineers, or they were marketeers, or what happened, and all of a sudden they became in business for themselves. They may be good technicians, but they don't know how to run a business. And hopefully that's what the Long Island Advancement of Small Business does, help them learn how to run a business.
It's interesting in terms of when you look at stats, and you then also have to make that comparison. How many people are actually really, truly unemployed or underemployed based on that they're going or transitioning into self-positions in terms of becoming consultants because it suits that particular time period, their phase that they're in their life or their business. How then is it there are opportunities for growth? Because when I look at it, and you're also very much in the global market, and your experience takes you in the global market, there are a tremendous amount of opportunities. But is it that so many do not look at where those potential opportunities are, or is there something else that needs to be done to kind of rein in to see where those growth opportunities are? Things phase out. Positions or career paths are not atypical the same. And now, I don't think this is that new that people are having multiple careers. And because of the time period we're now in, it makes it feasible or viable for those to happen.
Let me make a clarification regarding some of the people that are these technicians that went into business for themselves. Basically, all they did was buy themselves a job. They're working 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and they may be clearing $75,000 to $80,000 a year. The person lives on Long Island in Nassau County has to make $98,000 just to break even. The person lives in Suffolk County has to make $89,000 just to break even. They're struggling, but they want to stay here. They have a wife and a couple of kids in school, and they're trying to survive. That's what it boils down to. There's other people that are more aggressive or more ambitious. No longer can you think locally. You have to think globally. If you don't, you fall by the wayside. Before, you had a client out here, and they were dealing with you and on a continual basis. And if you don't check their pulse on a regular basis, you may find out that some company from England or France or India or China has has come in with a product that's 30% lower than what you're charging, and they'll be buying it for them. I'm not saying that's right, I'm just saying that's reality.
Okay, so then there are a number of different initiatives and resources that are available to help build. I think one of what's happening is going back and building the community and building the businesses in the communities. How would a small business owner then look at what the global opportunities are and then try to monitor that in terms of what's going on in their local area or market, or their market niche?
The problem that people have today, they take a lot of stuff for granted. You have the capabilities with the database or Google, for that matter, to Google a lot of information. If you don't read on a continual basis and find out what's going on in the world, you'll fall by the wayside. I tell my trade show clients that you no longer can think locally or nationally. You have to think globally. Okay. 58% of the companies that are doing business in the United States, American companies, are now doing business overseas. Mm-hmm. They're doing trade shows overseas. The United States used to be first as far as trade shows are concerned, no longer. Europe and India and China have certainly surpassed us as far as opening their arms and welcoming the United States companies into their country.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about some of the programs that you run that helps businesses.
Well, we have this new entrepreneur program that takes people that are looking for a job or starting a new business and give them ideas. We have a staff of people that we work with that have well over 100 years worth of experience that can be called upon to help them. Dr. Green is very active in that community. Also, Dr. Jim Freely, who happened to be my department head when I was teaching the MBA program at CW Post. And he's on board. He's been in teaching entrepreneurship for the last 34 years at LIA Post now. That's the new name. And he certainly has a lot of experience and capabilities that will be helpful to anybody that comes to him, that has the opportunity to talk to him.
Let's talk a little bit about the teaching part or aspect of your career, and also just then rein into, I know you write a lot and you're currently writing for the LIBN as well.
Right.
Talk a little bit about what you see, the transition or the development or growth opportunities for students coming out and preparing them for what the market is.
You sometimes wonder whether a college education is worth the expense because my grandson is now going to Providence College and it's $65,000 a year. And granted, he's very enthusiastic. He's very good at what he does. He's a graduate of Chaminade, and he had a number of different scholarships offered to him, but he chose Providence because he wanted that small college capability, also a very good college to begin with. But so many kids graduating from college today have an attitude that we're living in an entitlement society, like the world owes them a living. And it's sad, because I teach marketing to 20 bioscience PhD students out of Stony Brook. What I'm doing is teaching 20 bioscience doctorates how to get a job, what it boils down to. And I heard one young man say, well, I wouldn't work for less than $95,000 a year. And I was surprised, and I said, based on what? He said, well, I have my PhD. And I said, well, what else do you have? Well, I graduated with a 3.9 cum. I said, and what else do you have? Well, I said, did you do an internship? No. Did you do a mentorship? No. So all you have is book learning. Why should I hire you? Well, they certainly didn't like that. I did that 2 or 3 times to a number of different people, and they got very upset with me, to say the least. I think today you have to go a little bit further and be more creative and a little more hustle in order to make it worthwhile.
Well, I want to go into, jump from the writing part and then touch into mentorship, and I think we're getting ready to go into our first official break. But it is so important, and we, not just students or the younger people, individuals who are working do take everything for granted and think they have a sense of entitlement and not get that this is really not the real world. You're not entitled to anything. It's you have to work and prove your worth because someone else is just as capable or qualified or even more. That's going to add to the overall benefit of the company's bottom line. I think we're going to come up on our break. Thank you for joining us, and we'll come right back again. I'm Dr. Graham on My Business, Your World, with my guest, Mr. John A. Hill. Hello, thank you for joining us again. My Business, Your World, Dr. Graham, with my guest, Mr. John A. Hill. All right, so we're chatting about, entitlement and going into mentorship a little bit. Let's talk about mentorship, because mentorship is then very critical to individuals transitioning, not just when they get to college, through high school, because this is where the preparation will take them to that journey where they're going in, they're getting internships, they're building relationships, where they're networking, volunteering, organization to see what are the opportunities that are viable for them. Because oftentimes they're picking fields that are not going to be around in a couple of years, and then they find themselves they don't have transferable skills to go into another industry, or they're coming up on some kind of a brick wall, and this is where mentorship at a very much younger age definitely comes into play.
Mentorships is a new way to hire people today. I know of 3 companies, especially in the pharmaceutical field, that do not hire people. They'll put ads in the paper. That's only just to keep, it's more like a marketing thing, a marketing ploy than anything else. But they really hire through mentorships, okay? If you have the opportunity to work for a company and they bring you in, the nice thing about it is, and they really bring you in as a mentor rather than as an employee, is the fact the new HR laws, if they bring you in as an employee and after 30 days they say, thank you, we don't need you, it may take 6 to 9 months to get rid of you. Mm-hmm. As they bring you in as a mentorship, they can say after 3 months, thank you very much, we don't need you, and there's no recourse. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are looking at mentorship as a new way of hiring employees. And it also gives them an opportunity to see what you can do or not. You can fool somebody for a couple of 3 weeks, maybe a month, but not when you're working there for about 6 months and so forth. Sooner or later, they find out just how you are and how you're going to be. And I think under those conditions, people are being more aggressive as far as taking the time to really look at some of these people as they come in. There's a lot of, if you look at internships, if you go on, there's over 5 or 6 million internships available if you just Google internships. And mentorships are the same way. There's a lot of companies out here. They may not come in the front door. They'll accept your resume and so forth. But if you really want to get into it, you have to look to see if you can do a mentorship there. But a lot of people don't want to do mentorships because many times they don't get paid. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying if you're really interested in working for a specific company, you have to bite the bullet and go get it into that company that way, one way or another.
That's something that I do in a part of our personal development program that we run. It's a GPN program that's funded by Walmart, is to encourage that you have to take on, either you volunteer in that organization so that you can learn about that organization, learn the various roles, and if not that organization, there are other opportunities that will in the future raise itself, and you can then go in and apply for a position. But it's very, very challenging, and I find that it's because of this. They think they're entitled to. They've been displaced. I'm used to making this. This is what I can do or should do. And when I look at it, just generally speaking, even with your clients, they really do not have the potential or the capability to do what it is that they want or they think that they want. You've been in a position, for argument's sake, at a company, and you really have been just holding up space.
A lot of people. I can understand that. But when you look at the mentorships and you look at the internships and you look at people's resumes and so forth, I gravitate towards those kids that have worked part-time and went to school full-time because they know what it is. I especially look for kids that have worked in restaurants and so forth because you have to be on time. If you're a waiter, you have to be on time, you have to be personable, and you have to be a team player because if you're not, you won't last in the restaurant field.
Plus flexibility of the schedule.
Absolutely.
Because their hours in those industry are...
And I use that. And the other thing I hire, the ideal person that I used to hire is a woman that's, the ideal worker in the production area is a woman that's divorced, that has a couple of kids and a house. She has to work. When my engineers couldn't come to work when there was 2 inches of snow on the ground, you can bet your boots that I'd have all my production people in because the majority of them were women. And they needed the job and they needed the money.
Isn't that amazing? And even to date, we see that huge transition where women are doing very well, even in the academic environment, and then we have this disparity where men are not doing so well, and there are a number of other health complications and so on and so
38% or more women are getting their MBAs than ever before. Mm-hmm. And before it was something unique to see a woman into a management position. But nowadays, it's a situation where if you have a woman as a manager, she paid her dues to get there, believe me. And I have a lot of respect for her. Of course, I come out of a house with a wife and and 3 daughters, so I'm very pro-female, if you want to. And I continue to tell my daughters, you can do anything you want to do, you put your mind to it. And they have been very successful in their careers so far.
All went to school in the U.S. here? And
Boston College, Parsons School of Design, and Pace University.
Very nice.
My daughter Ellen was the youngest head nurse at North Shore Hospital. She's the top recruiter for them now. My daughter Rosemary was running a company called Rare Editions in New York City, a $30 million company. And my daughter Joanne is a senior designer for Walt Disney Books.
Very nice.
So I'm and my wife was an ESL teacher, spoke 5 languages, and yes, she was very involved in the community as well.
How many languages do you speak, John?
I'm lucky. I know enough to get in trouble in Spanish, French, and Italian. Okay, that's about it. So, okay, but how to order food, I'm very good at that. And, that's about it.
And you're also a very good cook, I hear.
Yes, I like to cook. I'm a fairly good cook. I like to cook and bake. I do that a lot. Okay.
We don't have any cookies on the table. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your writing. I know you're writing now for LIBN, and you have a couple of books that you've published and probably working on another, and I think you collaborate with a number of different writers.
I've written with Andrea Feinberg. We've written articles for Long Island, the HIA, Hot Bog Industrial Organization. I've written Tips and Tales from a Booth. I did that in 2008. I'm writing a sequel to that. I have a lot of it done already, and I just have a few more chapters that I have to add to it. The first book I wrote was called City Keys, which was a survival guide for a professional man coming to New York City. And it was a wonderful idea. I didn't have computers at the time. Myself and my associate, we wrote it together, and we spent 9 months typing it out. And I never forget that. And we had a couple of English professors from colleges over in Jersey that did all the review for us and what have you. And then we had it proof, and we had it printed, and we had copies stored over in New Jersey to send out, and the place caught on fire.
Wow.
So $500,000 worth of books went up just like that. So it was interesting, but it was approved by the New York Times, so it was very worthwhile. This book, the next book I wrote was this Tips and Tales from a Booth, and I'm also writing a book about my mother, and who died at 105. She was in Mary Manning Walsh, New York City. She was one of the longest residents there. She was there for 13 years. And my mother was a nurse for 60 years. And I nicknamed her Bullwhip because she was so tough. And the name of the book is My Mother Bullwhip, and I'm working on that. Myself and my sister are working on it together.
I'd love to hear about it. You should try and get that into some kind of film or something. I think that would be very interesting.
Well, I tell stories about when I went in the Navy in '52, and my mother kissed me goodbye and said, "Behave yourself." And I came home on leave, and I was looking for my clothes, and I went to one closet. And I used to spend a lot of money buying clothes, and I went to one closet, it wasn't there, and I went to another closet, it wasn't there. And I said, "Mom, where's my clothes?" She said, "What clothes?" "My civilian clothes." "What do you need your civilian clothes for? You have a uniform." I said, "Well, what'd you do with them?" She said, "I gave them away to St. Vincent de Paul." So I stayed home for 3 days, and I had to go back to work. I had to go back to the camp because I had no clothes. True story. People don't believe that, but it actually happened. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that definitely would make a fun film to make, and bringing a little bit back to the old days and kind of bring back some of the morals and backbone of what made parents who they were back then, back into the system.
My mother's
now.
favorite saying, we're not poor, it's just inconvenient.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about trade show. We touched on that, so let's jump into that a little bit. I know you've done a couple, and you've done some international shows as well. Tell us a little bit about the trade show and what's going on, and what's the difference right now between the trade shows in the U.S. and the international market?
Well,
Germany, for example.
There's one trade show in particular that I'm very fond of. It's Electronica, and that's held in Munich, Germany. and it's right after Oktoberfest. So you'll always have a bunch of ex-Germans that are still hungover from Oktoberfest coming to the trade show. But there's a 2 to 3 year waiting list to get into the show.
Wow.
And you could put 3 Javits centers into how big the show is over there. And when you're dealing in foreign shows, trade shows, it's not where you're trying to sell something at that particular time. The people want to get to know you as a person, an individual. And after you exchanged pleasantries and they found out about you and who you are and so forth, after the show is over, then you visit all the different places all the different companies that you've talked to, and then you do business then. And that's the way to do it. And I think it would be nice to have that type of attitude here in the United States, but that's not the case. And here it's push, 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 push. Sell as much as you possibly can, and if you don't, why haven't you sold? And I think at times it's very frustrating to deal with them, okay? But I've done shows throughout the world. I haven't done anything in India or China yet, but primarily in Italy. I've done shows in Italy and France and England and Germany. And it's different. It's a different way of approaching the trade show arena. But there's companies in the United States, the Fortune 500 companies do trade shows on a regular basis. They get enough qualified leads from trade shows that they never have to send their salespeople out to cold call or anything like that, because they have enough hot leads from a trade show to satisfy all their requirements.
All right, I want you to talk a little bit about how do they determine to get those really good leads to begin with. But let's talk a little bit about, are they not trying to transition and do some of those same relationship building here in a number of different aspects that you see? You're not noticing that change in business?
The average person goes to a trade show, visits 25 booths, okay, and that's in a regular show. In a pharmaceutical show, they may go to 18 to 20 booths, okay, because there's a lot more interaction between them to find out particularly what they're looking for and so forth. And you'll get people to go to a trade show rather than go to your office. And the reason being is that a trade show is neutral ground. I'm not in your office, you're not in my office. And people like it that way. You may not get them to go to your office, but they'll definitely take the time to see you at a trade show.
Okay, very interesting. Let's back up to some of your previous work experience and just touch a little bit before we go into our next break, J.H. and Associates.
Well, before I was a sole proprietor at one time, and J.H. Business Support Services, and I've been in technology most of my career. I run technology companies, if you will, but I'm not as up as technology today as I was many years ago because it changes so fast. But I think I've done a lot as far as my focus is primarily on marketing technology companies and putting a lot of effort into doing that particular type of work. Okay. And with the new ways to approach marketing today with social media and so forth, it's altogether different. It really is. It makes a difference when you do how you present your products and how you brand it and so forth.
All right, let's go into this next break, and we'll pick up again, touch a little bit probably on marketing and those social media, because I know some of the workshops that you facilitate touch upon some of those areas as
Absolutely.
well. Again, this is My Business Your World. I'm your host, Dr. Graham, with my guest, Mr. John A. Hill. And our number, if you have any questions for John or myself, it's 631-481-9124. Thank you. Thanks for joining us again. This is My Business Your World. I'm your host, Dr. Graham, with my guest, Mr. John Hill. John, we're chatting about, I guess, a little bit about talking about technology and going into probably marketing and SEOs. I guess we can never really talk too much about what are some of the trending things of technology. At the end of the day, we always have to remember core is always the same. Trends are just what facilitate or make convenience and can give you a little advantage, a competitive advantage for a little while, but you have to still be able to understand your business and what it's about so that you can navigate through technology. I mean, some resources are free, some you have to pay for, but it is, for a small business owner, I find that it is overwhelming because everybody has something to tell you that they can do or not do for you to help you to get that, and it all adds up to dollars that you don't have, and even though it's an intangible in the beginning, you can't really see it. Oftentimes for them, there's no tangible outcome.
Well, there's a lot of things changing in the world today when it comes to marketing and sales in general, okay? Percy H. Whiting wrote the first book on sales back in 1929. The 5 basic rules of selling was contact, qualification, presentation, interim close, and close. Now, if you go today, they don't have those same words, but basically it's the same thing. Okay?
Just expand it to be 14 or 10 more
Yeah,
steps.
right. They have a lot more added to it. I find today that the way people sell, it's not belly to belly like it was in my day when I was knocking on doors. I know of one young man that has been doing $500,000 with his company out in the West Coast. He's never met the person face to face. He does everything by text or by email, and he's been on the phone with him twice in 3 years, and he does $500,000 a year. And I told him, give me that account, and within 60 days he would be my account, guaranteed. Because if he's doing $500,000 with you right now, with just dialogue going back and forth, I wonder how much he's leaving on the table. I really do. And when I go to a client, I don't want to just be their salesman. I want to be their trusted advisor. I want them to come to me for everything. I don't care whether it's computers or pencils. I want them to talk to me. And that's the way I think a good salesman professional should act. A lot of people look down at I wrote an article saying everybody's in sales, but you'll hear people talking about it in such a derogatory term. I'm not in sales, I'm the president of a company. If you're the president of a company, you sell. Believe me, you sell. Okay, whether you want to say that or not, you're really selling. Okay, but like if you're an attorney, you're not a salesman. You'll have somebody that's somebody that puts the deals together for you. He's the deal maker. Okay, they may use all the different buzzwords they got, but it boils down to selling, and that's what I think is so important. And people don't realize that selling is the most successful field in the world. They make more money than all the movie stars and all of the athletes that you want to talk about and so forth. Salesmen are still the highest paid.
It's very interesting because it's really based on a relationship, and you have to build those relationships. If you don't have what it is, that connection with whomever it is that you're trying to sell to, it's not going to happen. But as you said, we all are sales individuals. I myself, I know I hate selling, but I know that I'm selling. There's always something in a conversation or a dialogue, an introduction, you're networking, well, what do you do, and so on. That's it. You're selling the image of the company. You're selling, your branding and so on and so forth. So we all have to somewhat become comfortable with it because no matter what position we're in, that's something that you're doing.
Absolutely.
In every aspect
Absolutely.
of that.
Absolutely. The people today, it's hard for these young kids that are fresh out of college to keep a dialogue up because they've been hiding behind their cell phones and their computers, and they don't know how to communicate. And I think that's a major problem today. And I had the opportunity to teach a bunch of young people how to stand booth duty. And the questions that they asked me were really amazing. Can we use our iPhone to get information? No, I said, you have to shake hands with somebody, and you have to look them in the eye, and you have to answer their question. Oh, my God. You'd think I asked them to come down, to shoot somebody. It was really amazing, their attitude regarding that. And after a while, in fact, I wrote an article about this too, and after a while, a lot of them got the idea of it. And this one young man, after the course was over, he came up to me and says, my parents said to me that they find it very interesting that I'm paying more attention at dinner and I'm participating in their conversation, and I'm not looking at my cell phone. And I said, perhaps now maybe you are ready for the real world, Yeah. So that's really actually happened. So I thought that was interesting.
It is, because if we're living longer lives, but the youth are not, the younger generation are not prepared for what the real world is. they're not equipped for it. While they may be very technologically savvy and advanced, the other soft core skills that makes them effective are going to give them that competitive advantage. Very few of them have it. The few that have it typically are more successful and will charter their path. Earlier you mentioned, I too would go for someone who is doing multi-roles. Why? They have a passion, they have a drive, and they're committed to what it is. They know what it means to have the result that they want, and they're not going to fall short and say, oh, this and so on, or whatever the stories are going to be. And they're very few. And even to date, you still have to share that same thing, and not just with the younger generation, even with adults. I'm actually amazed when I hear people looking for position, and because they can't make this, they'd rather make nothing at all. And it's not even effective. You talked earlier, you have to bite the bullet. You have to take something in order for you to propel yourself to where it is that you want to go. Nobody plans for these economic downturn. You never know, and even you could be in the most perfect position, it just never fails.
I hate this terminology. They refer to me, John Hill's an expert at trade shows. I hate the word expert, because if you're not learning every day and continue to learn and continue to educate yourself, you fall by the wayside. And I tell someone when I say that, and I said, yes, I'm an expert in trying to learn all my customers' needs. That's what I'm an expert at. And I try very hard to continue to do that, because if you're not learning every day, something's going to happen. Somebody else is going to be there to replace you, that's for sure. I find it very interesting that people say, well, I'm here and that's it, I don't need any more education. And if that's the case, why are so many people going back to school? There's a lot of older people in their 30s and 40s and 50s going back to school. And I hate to hear a guy in his 50s say, oh yeah, I know enough on computers. Yeah, I try not to use them. Why not? They're there, you better take advantage of them. If you don't, you're going to lose out.
Yeah, it is very tough, because it was at a summit earlier, I think it was late last year, and one of the panels that we sat on, we were talking about school, technical versus going into, four-year university, so on and so forth. But I think what is happening is that there is a need and there's a transition for technical aptitude. You have teachers who are not employed and they have multi-position either in retail or different fields. Some I've heard are in the security work, PI, and so on. But then in the audit industry, they're looking for people who can teach and so on and so forth. So why are they not aware of? Why aren't they transitioning into some of these roles?
Well, it's the attitude of the Americans. Okay, only in America do we look at a craft and look down on it. Okay, if you didn't go to a college, okay, he's a carpenter, or he's a mechanic, or he's a plumber. Let me tell you, a lot of people don't realize on the aerospace program, the most successful people made more money than all the PhD and so forth were the plumbers. Okay, so and I know a lot of plumbers that are making a lot of money. And if you look at it, to come to your house, it costs you $125 to come to your door. I mean, that's not too shabby as far as an hourly wage is concerned. And the sad part about it is there's not enough people going into that profession, because a lot of adults and the parents have been brainwashed. My son has to have an education. My daughter has to have an education. Well, maybe they're not cut out to be, go to college. Maybe they want to do something else other than go to college. Maybe they want to be a mechanic. Maybe they want to be a plumber. There's nothing wrong with that. In Europe and other countries, they treat that as a strong profession and treat it on the same level as an educated person. I think that's very important.
Yeah, they do get great benefits and there are tremendous amount of opportunities. I mean, I think it was Newsday that published something a couple months back in terms of the trends and where the industries are, where the job opportunities are. You're looking at healthcare and sustainability, conservation, energy efficiency, opportunities for every area that you're going to look at, where those growth opportunities are going to be and go.
There are more trade shows in the healthcare field in the last 2 years than any other field right now. It's continuing to emerge and it's not getting any smaller, it's going to grow. When you have organizations like LIJ that are becoming their own insurance agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big thing for them right now because the Affordable Health Care Act is not meeting all their requirements.
Right.
So I thought that was very interesting, too.
Yeah, they're the largest, I think like the 14th or the 4th largest in I think in the U.S. in the nation, and they're the largest in New York State.
And they're going to continue to grow, too. They're adding more hospitals on a continual basis.
Mm-hmm.
But years ago, it was a situation where a doctor came in, and no matter what he did and so forth, everything was fine. No, the doctors today have to prove themselves. There's a P&L statement attached to each one of them.
Yes.
And I think that's so important.
Well, they have to learn, and in my PhD program, I did mine in healthcare administration, as you had a lot of medical practitioners, MDs going back to be able to understand that whole aspect of it, because it's critical to the success of any business or any organization they're going to be a part of. Let's back up and talk a little bit about your prior years consulting in those companies that you worked with. Tell me a little bit about those and making, $7.5 million on Wall Street.
Well, I was the president of Megadata, president of Digital Metcom, and president of Q1 Corporation. I did a secondary with one company. I did a complete, we brought out another company out, and I was able to raise different types of monies from for those organizations. Megadata, I went from the first salesman to the president of the company, and for 3 years I took it from $250,000 worth of questionable business up to $10 million worth of very profitable business. And I've always been top salesman in every company. I turned down the presidency a couple of 3 times because I didn't want to take a cut and pay. Don't give me, yeah, I didn't. Quite frankly, I didn't. And then I finally negotiated with the board of directors to continue to get my commissions from the opportunities that I worked on. I was still a top salesman in the organization. I like sales. I like to communicate with people. I like to deal with people. I think that's very important. But you have to be sensitive to people. If you get to a point where you take people for granted, you'll fall by the wayside. I honestly believe that.
Now, let's take sales and look at sales, because sales, obviously, when you talk about core of a business, you don't always have a very effective sales team. And by effective, they don't understand how the rest, you can make all the money in the world, but at the end of the day, it's the financial, the core that makes all the difference. You have to be able to collect that money. It has to be valid sales that you're making, sales that are collectible. So what do you see that trend or that transition for the salespeople then and now? Do you see more or understanding what it means in terms of part of the operation? Because that's one of the reasons I think you don't have too many good sales reps.
Well, the thing is changing dramatically, and there's some new ways to approach that marketplace today that hasn't been done before.
Okay. Now, I guess we're coming up on our next break. I don't think I'll ever get used to, okay, when next, so on. So let's chat about a little bit about your background and mentoring.
Okay. When I got discharged from the Navy, I was a very unhappy young man. And I was fortunate enough to find somebody that took me underneath his wing and made all the difference in the world. And I certainly like to do that today. I talk to a lot of kids and try to help them along the way. And I'm to a point in my life where I want to give back, not just take, but to give back. I started the Long Island Advancement Small Business. I don't draw a salary. I don't draw anything out of it. In fact, it cost me money to get involved with it to start it off. But I think when you have somebody come up to you and say, "Thanks so much, John, you certainly helped me a lot," that makes me feel good. And it makes me feel that I have my grandson saying, "I can't live on Long Island, Papa, I have to move." That bothers me. I would like him to stay here because I love Long Island. I raised 3 daughters here, and I have 5 grandkids here. I want to stay on Long Island.
I think we're going to come up on our break. Thank you for joining us, and we'll come right back again. I'm Dr. Graham on My Business, Your World, with my guest, Mr. John A. Hill. Thank you for joining us again. This is My Business, Your World. I'm your host, Dr. Graham. We have our guest today, John Hill from JA Associates and President and CEO for LIASB. John, we're on our final segment. Thank you for coming out and chatting with us. It's been great. Let's wrap up and just continue talking about mentorship. And you were sharing about when you left the Navy and you took on the role, had a mentor. Have you had other mentors throughout your process? And you're talking about other young people or young business owners that you have taken on that role to help guide them through and help them to become more successful.
One of the programs, I was director of the internship program at Farmingdale State for about 5 years. I had started off there. I've been COO of a company that was in the in that particular area, and I ended up as the president of the company asked me to take on the internship role, and I did, and I enjoyed it very much. To teach the young people how to present, do a PowerPoint presentation, and how to present to a group of people is very interesting and very informative. They liked it so much that they asked me to stay on and continue to do that. And I've written a lot of letters for the young people that were finishing up their third year at Farmingdale State and moving on and going to Stony Brook to get to their final year. And I thought it was just wonderful that they accepted it. Okay, and it made a difference to me because I had an impact on somebody else's life, and that's important to me.
It's very interesting, and I'm going to go back to even my journey throughout the academic world. And some of the things when they tell you, it's like, oh, you should volunteer, you should do this, you never have time for it. Never have time for it, and so on and so forth. And I transitioned through a number of different programs because at one point I wanted to become an archaeologist, at one point I wanted to become a geologist, at one point I wanted to do this, and so on and so forth. But business always kept just hitting me, just did very well at it. And you just never ever had the right opportunities. And I think that sometimes is a challenge because while I wanted to volunteer, become active, and do that tidbit of networking and so on, and when you're younger you have the ego. We know everything, we don't need to do that, we don't need to do this. But you have to recognize very early on who or what it is that you want to be. And once you do that, I think you have individuals who will see that and naturally gravitate to take the extra step to say, listen, do this and do that. It's so important for more seasoned learners or business individuals to take that active role because I think it makes a difference. Find the students or the individuals that you have or you can connect with that you can help build them, empower them to become more successful.
You were ahead of me in school from a standpoint of knowing what you wanted to be because when I was in school I just wanted to be a jock, that's all. And then when I went into service, I came out and I had a minor in engineering, and I found out early in my career that engineers don't make as much as salesmen. So I think I'd rather do sales. And sales was much more convenient than it was to do engineering because you always caught hell when something didn't work. And a salesman, it was just I just gravitated to that and so forth, and got to a point where it's so good at communicating with some of my clients that even when they had a problem when I was a field engineer, I could have them, I could tell them what to do and they could do it so they could fix it with me when not showing up, which I thought was very good. And then I found out that salesmen make a lot more money, and all the work that I was doing, and because I was doing such a good job as a field engineer, they decided to buy more equipment, but I didn't get the commission. The salesman got the commission. I said, wait, what's wrong with this picture? I think I better go into sales. So I went into sales, and I was trained by J. Douglas Edwards, who was considered an outstanding trainer, but he believed in having everything was a quality speak. There was an answer that you can give for everything. Like if somebody came up and asked you how much, and you had a canned presentation for that. And to this day, I still remember, and that was close to 40 years ago. If you consider price alone, you abrogate the quality of the product. Let's go over the fine points of the product first, and then we'll discuss price. I mean, that's the way, but you had to say it in such a way that it sounded like it just rolled off your tongue,
Yeah.
and that was it. But there was a lot of other things, like somebody complained about your field service. you'd say, well, I can understand. I said, what would you do if somebody in your organization was not good? What would you do? I'd fire them. So did we, sir. And that's the way it went. Okay, so we always had an answer for that, and it was very good. But nowadays, people seem to be aware of all these different buzzwords and answers that you can give them, so you can't just come up with a dialogue and have them respond to it. You have to be much more sensitive to what their needs are. And I like to, if you get to a point where people don't like to be sold, they like to buy. And you have to keep that in mind.
Emotional.
But if you put enough roadblocks in their way to lead them down the path you want them to go, it makes the decision. Makes it easier for you to have them make that decision to buy something. And that's what I try to do when I deal with them. When I go in to train somebody in trade shows, how to stand booth duty, or a person wants me to take over and run their trade show, I interview them as they interview me. Because some people say they want to be in trade shows, or they want to do a trade show, but yet they don't do anything to prepare themselves for a trade show, which is very bad. When they ask the question, do you have a database? Are you going to send something out? And they keep giving you half answers. That's not the way to look at it. You have to be prepared. If you go, trade shows are a big investment, and you have to. And this one gentleman I was dealing with, and he said, well, no, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that. And I said, well, I do worry about that. And he says, you're hard to do business with. And I said, well, I'm not hard to do business with. I'm just being realistic. Because if you fail, are you going to take the blame? They'll blame it on me. And I said, I can't afford that. Not with my clients. I mean, I have to be 110% right all the time, whether I want to or not. I just have to be that good at what I do, or else nobody's going to deal with me. Okay? There's no such thing as a bad trade show. Only people that are there.
You have to build and have confidence and in anything that you're selling so that other people can buy, and so you have to know your product. And you have to be able to have integrity. I think it makes all the difference in the world. So any takeaways, because I think we're coming up on our last probably minute or so for the show that you'd like to share?
Only that I say, if somebody asked me what the first thing I do when you tell somebody that's going to do a trade show, I say the first thing you do is take the chairs out of the booth, so you must stand and talk to people. Because a lot of people don't do that. They sit down and relax and say, oh, we're here to relax. That's not what a trade show is all about. And the other thing is have a plan. Because if you don't have a plan when you do a trade show, all you really are is an exhibitor, is an attendee with a booth. That's the difference. Okay?
All right. Well, John, thank you again for joining us.
It is my pleasure.
I would love to have our conversation maybe about the book and the movie that you're going to have come out about your mom. I'm sure we'll be in touch and see you around again. Again, this is My Business, Your World. I'm Dr. Graham. You can reach us at 631-481-9124, or you can send us an email at info@grahamconsultingandresearch.com. Thank you.